Paris, 1943, 21:40 hours. Claire Montaigne, 26, resistance courier, sits at a wooden table stitching a torn sleeve while hiding a sewing needle in her palm, her fingers steady as she works and counts breaths. She tells the handler across from her to keep talking while she finishes. He answers with a list of names. She nods without looking up and keeps sewing. The needle shifts position against her skin as boots approach and the list ends. She pulls the thread tight and the cloth bunches. Her hand slips and she pricks her thumb on purpose. Blood beads and she presses it to the fabric. She tells the handler to pass the paper now while she wipes the stain. He hesitates and she tells him to hurry as she keeps dabbing. The paper slides under the cloth. She folds the sleeve and pins it closed. The needle disappears inside the seam. A knock lands hard and the door opens. She stands with the sleeve held out and says it tore again while she steps forward. The officer asks what she is doing and she answers that she repairs uniforms and shows the stitch. Her hand trembles once and she steadies it by pushing the needle deeper. He reaches for the sleeve and she pulls it back and asks him not to touch the blood. He recoils and waves her through. The corridor crowds and bodies brush past. She keeps the sleeve tight against her ribs and moves with the flow. Someone bumps her elbow and the pin loosens. She tightens her grip and tells the man behind her to watch his step while shifting sideways. The needle bites again and she welcomes the pain because it anchors the cloth. A guard asks where she is going and she answers to deliver repairs now. A search line forms and bags open. She places the sleeve on the table and turns it inside out as instructed. The guard prods the seam and she explains the stitch while pointing to the thread path. He pulls and the cloth holds. She tells him the knot is hidden and she'll wear. He loses interest and pushes the sleeve back. She takes it and thanks him and steps away before he changes his mind. At the exit, a siren cuts conversation short. People freeze and then move faster. She walks without stopping and keeps her eyes level. A runner whispers a warning and she tells him to keep moving while she adjusts the sleeve under her coat. The needle presses into skin again and she slides it along the hem to a safer spot. The door opens and closes and the line breaks. Outside the checkpoint, she turns into a stairwell and sits to retie the pin. She opens the seam just enough to slide the paper free. She reads the names once and commits them to memory. She tells the runner to burn the list now while she reseals the sleeve. He asks if the needle is worth the risk, and she tells him it already paid for itself. A courier arrives late and out of breath. She hands over the sleeve and says deliver it intact. He asks why it matters, and she tells him the stitch holds more than cloth while tying the final knot. Footsteps echo again, and she stands the sleeve past his hands, and the needle stays with her. She moves the opposite direction to draw attention away. At a safe room door, she pauses and listens. She scratches the seam with a fingernail and feels the needle still there. She removes it and bends the tip flat. She tells the watcher to count the knocks and open on the fourth. He does, and she steps in and lays the needle on the table. The names move without paper, and the network stays silent. A message spreads by mouth and memory, and no lists remain. She cleans the blood from her thumb and wraps it tight. She tells the cell to change routes now, and they comply. Arrests miss their targets by minutes. She pockets the needle and leaves with empty hands. The trick stays small and stupid, and it works because it looks like nothing at all. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment. It helps a lot. A bandage loosens as she pulls it free and uses it to bind the sleeve tighter her fingers, working fast while she speaks to the runner to keep his pace. Steady, he asks if the route is clear, and she tells him to move now and not look back. The knot slips once, and she reties it against her. Wrist at checkpoint shout rises, and she pushes him ahead and takes a different turn. A pulse surges in her thumb when the needle shifts, and she clamps down to stop the bleed. She tells herself out loud to keep walking while adjusting the seam. A passerby asks for help, and she answers with a shake of the head and keeps moving. A guard steps into her path, and she angles past while explaining she is late. He grabs the sleeve, and she pulls free and keeps her stride. A tool slips from a crate and clatters near her feet. She stoops to pick it up and uses the paws to slide the paper deeper. She hands the tool back and tells the worker to secure it. He nods and turns away. The sleeve presses hard, and she welcomes the pain because it locks the fold. A whistle cuts short talk, and she moves again. A stretcher strikes her hip and jolts the seam. She steadies it with her forearm and tells the bearers to slow. One curses and pushes on. She adjusts the pin with a practiced twist and keeps pace beside them. A medic asks for gauze, and she gives the bandage she freed. They exchange by seconds, and she peels off at the corner. A hand grabs her elbow, and she spins enough to break the grip. She tells the man to let go while stepping back. He apologizes and releases. She checks the sleeve by touch and feels the needle flat. Footsteps converge, and she merges with a group and lowers her head. An order is barked, and she obeys without stopping. A bag is opened beside her, and contents spill. She kneels to help and uses the cover to crease the cloth tighter. She tells the owner to keep items together while pressing the fold with her knee. A guard waves them on, and she rises with the sleeve hidden. The group moves, and she exits at the next break. A door jams and bodies compress. She braces and keeps the sleeve pinned with her chin. Someone asks if she is hurt, and she answers no while shifting weight. The jam clears, and she slips through. A call rings out behind, and she does not turn. The needle stays put, and the paper stays silent. A runner appears at her side and whispers a warning. She tells him to split now and take the long way. He hesitates, and she repeats the order while tightening the knot. He goes, and she veers opposite. A search fan spreads, and she times her steps to pass through the gap. A pocket search starts ahead, and she steps into a doorway and pretends to mend. She tells the occupant to give her a moment and keeps stitching. A guard looks in and loses interest. She finishes the false stitch and seals the real one beneath. The moment passes, and she moves. A message changes hands without stopping. She nods once and keeps walking. The sleeve remains intact, and the needle remains unseen. A patrol doubles back and finds nothing. Routes shift and arrests fail to connect. She counts exits and chooses one. The trick holds, and the network keeps moving. A pulse spikes when the seam catches on a latch, and she freezes long enough to ease it free. She tells the passerby to go ahead while flattening the cloth. With her forearm, the latch releases, and she steps forward. A shout follows, and she increases pace without running. The needle presses flat and stays hidden. A cart tips and boxes scatter across her path. She drops to help and uses the bend to slide the sleeve under her coat. She tells the driver to lift the axle while she stacks the boxes. He obeys and thanks her. Boots move past and do not stop. She stands and blends back into motion. A guard checks papers ahead, and she slows to let others pass. She watches hands and waits for an opening. Someone argues and draws attention. She steps through the gap and tells the guard she was waved on. He accepts the claim and turns the noise. The seam remains closed. A handoff fails when a contact does not arrive. She adjusts and keeps moving. She tells herself to switch targets and repeats the names once under her breath while walking. The needle anchors the fold and keeps the paper silent. A patrol crosses, and she times her steps to pass behind them. A door slams and blocks her route. She pivots and enters a shop line. She tells the clerk she needs thread and holds up the sleeve. The clerk nods and turns away. She uses the counter edge to crease the seam tighter. The line advances, and she exits with nothing purchased. A whistle sounds close, and she steps into a stairwell and sits to retie the pin. She speaks aloud to steady hands and counts to 4 while tightening. The pin locks, and she stands. Footsteps pass and fade. She leaves the stairwell and resumes pace. A courier brushes past and drops a token. She picks it up and tells him he forgot. This he takes it and nods once the exchange confirms. The route she shifts the sleeve to her other side and keeps walking. The needle remains flat and safe. A checkpoint closes ahead as she diverts through a service corridor. She tells a worker she's delivering repairs now and keeps moving. He points the way and returns to work. The corridor ends and opens to another flow. She merges without pause. A search order echoes and people spread. She moves with purpose and does not stop. She tells a man blocking her path to step aside, and he does. The seam holds under pressure, and the paper does not crackle. Seconds pass, and the order fades. A safe signal appears, and she slows to normal pace. She checks the sleeve by touch and confirms the needle position. She redirects toward the drop and prepares the release. The trick stays small and unnoticed. The names stay alive and moving. A pin bends when she presses it flat against the table edge, and she adjusts without stopping. She tells the contact to keep watch. While she opens the seam a finger width, he nods and turns away. She slides the paper free and folds it once footsteps approach, and she reseals the stitch with a single pull and hides the needle again. A knock comes too early, and she freezes, then moves. She tells the watcher to answer and keep talking. He opens the door and speaks while she finishes the knot. A face appears and asks what is happening. The watcher replies and blocks the view. She stands and smooths the sleeve, and the door closes. A breath stutters when the paper sticks to skin, and she peels it free. She tells herself to focus, and does. She reads once and burns the page immediately. Ash flakes, and she crushes them. The names stay in her head and nowhere else. The needle remains ready. A route changes on the fly, and she accepts it. She tells the contact to leave now and not return. He asks if it worked, and she answers yes while pocketing the needle. He goes, and she moves the opposite way. The split confuses any tail and buys time. A patrol crosses and pauses, and she keeps walking. She answers a question with a short reply and does not slow. The patrol moves on, and she keeps her pace. Even the sleeve shows nothing and invites no touch. The trick remains invisible. A message passes by voice only, and she confirms it with a nod. She tells the next link to repeat it twice and forget the rest. He does and moves on. The chain holds without paper and without signs. Consequences ripple outward. A delay threatens when a gate closes, and she waits without fidgeting. She tells the guard she will be quick and steps back when told. The gate opens and she passes through. The needle presses flat and does not cut. The sleeve stays intact. A final check by touch confirms nothing left behind. She removes the needle and bends it beyond use. She tells herself the work is done and keeps moving. The bent metal goes into a drain and disappears. The trick ends clean. A report arrives hours later and confirms arrests missed and routes held. She listens and gives one correction. The network adjusts and survives another sweep. The smallest tool carried the heaviest load. A door closes behind her, and she does not look back. The day continues without records or lists. The lesson remains simple and repeatable. The needle saved lives because it looked useless. What did you think? Intriguing, right? Watch the video on your screen. I selected it especially for you. See you there.